Neil from Messick here, bringing you one of the quirkiest and the weirdest pieces of equipment that we've had through the lot here in a little while. I've made equipment videos here on YouTube for 10 years now, and well, I could probably get more views by showing you the popular stuff. What is more fun to me is finding the things that are a little weird, the kind of purpose-built, unique, interesting pieces of equipment, and this is absolutely one of those. So join me here this morning. We're going to walk around New Holland's Forklift.
Messick's a helping hand with your land.
When you think forklifts, New Holland may not be the first place that you go, right? This is a company typically known for their ag equipment, but within the ag equipment space, New Holland really has done very well in specialty tractors. Think narrow machines and orchards and vineyards and those kinds of places. And when you're carrying the crops out of those farm fields, you need an off-road forklift in order to be able to move them around. So thus, New Holland looked at their product line and kind of recognized the need for their customers to be able to move these totes around. Now, when they recognized this need and they wanted to build a machine, this is a pretty niche product, right? And I think they came up with a really cool, interesting, and innovative way in order to create this thing. So what is so funny to me here is that the underlying tractor underneath of this forklift is actually an LB75 tractor loader backhoe, and you can kind of recognize the pieces here, right? From your front tires, if you had a hood and a loader off the front and a backhoe off the rear, you've got essentially an LB75. And so when they would have looked to come up with a forklift for these off-road applications by taking the LB75, removing the loader and the backhoe, putting a set of forks up on the back of the machine and turning the cab around, they were able to use an existing product and kind of reconfigure it and to suit the need for this off-road forklift. Underneath this machine here is, again, it's the LB75. These are built in Wichita, Kansas, so it is a made in the USA product. Interesting as well because a lot of the tractors coming from this company that are destined for these specialty markets come out of Italy, but this is actually a US made product because that's where the TLBs are coming from. There's a lot of interesting, thoughtful things here on the fork and mast setup of this machine that again tailor it to this very specific use of carrying farm products out of a field. There's hydraulic accumulators put in a number of different places here that allow the boom to kind of cushion and ride as you're driving across rough ground. You have a typical pallet fork frame down here at the bottom to get under those forks and crates and carry them. But this one also has a really unique pinching mechanism up here at the top. If you have two crates sitting on top of each other, you can hydraulically adjust this pinching mechanism to be able to hold the crates in and pinch them in from the top and the bottom of the mast. So as you're driving across the ground, moving around, these things don't jostle and fall onto the ground. So pretty interesting. It's not just a typical forklift thrown out into the field. They've actually taken some steps in order to address this specific application. If you've run a forklift before, you know there's oftentimes a lot of extra hydraulic functions out here on the mast to help you line up to your load correctly. This one is a little interesting here. When I run forklifts around the store here normally, you're usually side shifting the entire fork frame left and right. But in the case of this, you side shift the entire mast assembly, not just the frame. To me, that's interesting because that keeps that load kind of centered here on the mast structure, as opposed to throwing it off to the side and counterbalancing that load, right? It's keeping everything in line, all that weight kind of staying centered. You don't have a ton of offset on this machine, which again probably makes sense because you're keeping this heavy load centered on the machine as you're driving in rough and hilly areas. Sitting up here in the cab of the machine, when you take a look around in here, things are fairly simplistic. It's pretty clear this is a machine that's made for rugged work, right? There's nothing in here that's fancy. You don't have carpeted headliners or those kinds of things. But you do have weatherization in here at least. You can get these in cab or open station models. This cab model has both heat and air conditioning in it. And by adding the cab structure in here, you don't do too much that limits your visibility. While this kind of feels a little aftermarket-y to me, it's not like a purpose-built, closed-in tractor loader backhoe could be. They've done a pretty good job of not messing up your sight lines here when you're looking out of things. So the cab doesn't, say, make you feel closed in. Up here on the front right pillar is the control panel that I recognize out of the previous generation of New Holland skid steer. It's just a fairly simple button indicator setup. We work through the operator controls here. Starting on the right-hand side, you have the 4 sticks for operating the mast. So up and down, your tilt, your side shift, and that auxiliary pincher up there on the top. Most of your controls for work lights, turn signals, 4-ways, 4-wheel drive engagement, diff locks are all down here below the steering wheel. And then on the right-hand side of the steering wheel, we have the reverser. So we can very easily shuttle between forward and reverse. As far as gears go, this is only a 4-speed, but you have a 1 through 4 to synchromesh transmission, so you can shift this one on the fly as you go. Brakes are down here on the floor with a foot throttle to do most of your driving. It's a pretty quick machine to get around. This will go up to 24 miles an hour, and I think that's a little interesting here that we're traveling potentially over distances to get crops back to a loading area or to a farm, and so they've given you a lot of speed out of this machine. I've always been committed to giving you some of the good and the bad of what we look at in these things, and I've got one issue with this machine that for us has been a little bit of its Achilles heel in finding a large customer base for it. So we look out here at the specification, its lift capacity out here on this pallet fork frame, it comes in at 5,500 pounds, and for a machine of this size, that's a fairly low number. Now, again, if you look at the application that New Holland has targeted this machine towards, that's probably a specification that they had in mind, right? Because we're looking at moving apples, moving grapes, moving those kinds of things, and not necessarily industrial type work. But if I look here at the rest of the machine, it certainly is capable of lifting a whole lot more than that. And we would be happy to see a bigger mast out on this machine because it would open it up to us being able to find more customers. But you look at the things that they've optimized this machine for. Again, that's what I think is the most interesting about this unit, about how they clearly have looked at this very specific task and done all that they could in order to make the machine that is the best for that task. So you have things that you don't find on other off-road forklifts, like cushioning valves and the pinching mechanism here at the top. That, 24 miles an hour, right? Some of those cool features that really work for those applications and not necessarily a monster forklift that you might have in a stone yard. So that's a little bit on New Holland's F50 forklift. Pretty cool, right? Not something you might think of this company for, but really an interesting piece of equipment. This one is in stock here at Messick and is available. So if you're shopping for a piece of equipment like this and we can help, or if you've got parts and service needs for a machine you've already got, give us a call. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at messick.com. But in the case of this, mouth stopped working. Words came faster.